That's just started. I'm also going to stream it live to our Facebook page if I can. Last time we recorded it and put it on YouTube. And this time we're going to try something different. So you'll just have to give me a moment while this loads up. I would say talk amongst yourselves, but if I've got it right, you can't. So you'll have to excuse me. You'll just have to give me a moment while this loads up. I would say talk amongst yourselves, but if I've got it right, you can't. So you'll have to excuse me. You'll just have to give me a moment while this loads up. I would say talk amongst yourselves, but if I've got it right, you can't. So you'll have to excuse me. Right, that unfortunately did not work in the way I had planned it. So we will record it. As I say, we are recording it. So we'll put it on YouTube as we did last time. Life's too short to get involved with that, but I have done it before on Facebook, and I don't quite know what went wrong this time. So, housekeeping. My name's Andrew Coburn. I'm the treasurer of the library campaign. I'm going to be doing the, if you like, the technical background to this, trying not to say too much after I've said this little introductory bit. The meeting, as I said, is being recorded. We plan to go on for about an hour and a half, if that is, you all occupy the time. I'm not sure there's much else to say. I mean, if you can rename yourself, most people are named as something that makes sense, but if you can rename yourself, it wouldn't do any harm. But I think we can live with it as at the moment. I am going to keep everybody on mute. You're welcome to use the chat. And in a moment, when Nick starts speaking, we're going to be sharing the screen for some slides that he has, but we're not going to be enabling screen sharing for any other purpose. Just so that you know. Right, I think that's all I need to do by way of introduction. I'm going to pass over to Laura. Laura, you will need to unmute yourself.
Hello, everybody. I'm the chair of the library campaign. Andrew calls himself the treasurer, but do note he does a lot more than count beans, so the titles are immaterial. Lovely to see so many of you here. We've got Chi from Japan. I don't know where all the rest of you are from, but quite a mix, I think. At our first Zoom meeting, I think people all agreed that libraries need friends in hard times, but they also need friends when things seem to be all right, to make sure that things don't go wrong. So there's room within what you might call this movement for every kind of friends group. And the other thing that people agreed on is that public libraries are not good at publicising themselves at all. At local level, the standard varies enormously. At national level, there's remarkably little. But there is one thing in October, which is very well timed, because that's just when councils start to think seriously about their budget for the coming year. There's something called Libraries Week, which is run by CILIP, with a whole toolkit to go with it, some nice posters and a whole toolkit of things to campaign with. So we thought we'd invite CILIP along to explain what it's all about. CILIP is the Chartered Institute of Library and Information Professionals. All those words bear a very heavy weight. It's a name with a lot of background behind it, but it's the Librarians Association, and they don't just cover public libraries. They do general things like standards of training and ethics. They also deal with school libraries, academic libraries, special collections, national collections, the whole enormous world of information, including at the moment NHS information and health information. So that at the moment is huge. So CILIP does an awful lot. In the past, it hasn't perhaps always been as assertive as it might be, but I do think they've been doing some splendid stuff recently, and we cover some of it. If you go to our website and look at back issues of the magazine, if you look at issue number 99, we cover some of the stuff they've done recently there. But for the moment, I will shut up and leave it to Nick Poole, who's the Chief Executive of CILIP, to tell us more.
Thank you, Laura. Good evening, everyone. If you see me taking large swigs from this, it's not gin. We're not quite that point of the evening. It's just I have a slightly sore throat. Can I just do a sound check? Can you hear me okay if I talk at this sort of level? Brilliant, fantastic. Well, really, really grateful to you all for inviting me to come along and talk a little bit about the work we're doing. I'm going to speed through this a little bit because I'd really like to hear what you think and what you think we should be doing better. But Andrew, I wondered, are you happy to bring the slides up?
I will do that right now.
Smashing, thank you very much. Brilliant. Advocating for a strong and united national public library service. As Laura said, we're going to choose the words carefully. My background is I'm the son of a journalist and a school teacher, so I never stood a chance. It was always going to be a career in libraries for me. And I think it's fair to say I've been dismayed to see the condition that our national public library service is in, as I'm sure we all are. So I'd really love to lay out a little bit about what we're doing and to get your thoughts. But everything I'm going to talk about this evening is on that web page, cilip.org.uk/campaigns and advocacy. So if there's anything at all there that you'd like to know more about, please let me know. Andrew, could we move on a slide, please? Splendid, thank you. So yes, we're the Chartered Institute. The Queen is our patron. We don't hear much from her, but we did write a letter of condolence to her recently, obviously. We were established in 1898 to work for the benefit of the public, to promote education and knowledge through the establishment and development of libraries and information services. And we have two specific legal functions within that charter. One is to promote and encourage the maintenance of adequate and appropriate provision of library and information services. We can discuss the words adequate and appropriate, and to scrutinise any legislation affecting the provision of library and information services, and to promote such additional legislation as we believe necessary. Andrew, could we move on again, please? Thank you. So our view, I don't think it'll really come as much of a surprise, is that everyone everywhere should benefit from a strong local library. It's a fairly simple proposition. I was recently on a call with 20 other library associations from Russia, Kazakhstan, Malaysia, China. All of them have a national strategy for libraries. All of them have a firm belief in the educational and empowering value of a library service. All of them believe that libraries were the original platform for levelling up. And so we don't have that view in the UK right now. So our 2015 strategy said we'll do two things. Where there are good things happening, we'll celebrate them. And when there are bad things happening, we'll challenge them and seek to change them. So we, when I say we, we're 46 paid professional staff and a community of around 10,000 members working in different parts of the library sector. Andrew, if we could, please. Thank you. So I think we all know this, but I thought it was worth just looking at what our take is. I was always told that a good solution comes from a well-defined problem. So we've spent quite a lot of time trying to really work out what's going on here. It's been a bad time for libraries generally, and particularly the idea of a national, fully funded library network. We've seen service reductions, wholesale loss of professional roles, and I think there are a number of things driving those issues. So the political agenda towards regional devolution essentially shattered the idea of public libraries as a national service. The reduction in centrally distributed grants to local government meant that you were handing local government the responsibility but not the money. which means we've ended up with a two-tier model. We've ended up with library haves and have-nots. Persistent culture of non-intervention by the DCMS minister meant that the Libraries Act is no longer effective as a legal tool. We've taken legal advice from a QC on the use of the Libraries Act, and their advice was it's a busted flush, you should look to the Equalities Act instead. The sector itself abandoned service standards, which would have provided some measure of protection. The success or failure of our local libraries came down really to how good your local engagement is, so it became a locally devolved matter, which means that ultimately everything comes down to local spending power, so council tax preset, business rates, and local influence. And I think part of the issue we've seen is that a great deal of the value in our professional community was set aside in a bid for local relevance. There's a comedy show where somebody's standing in a church and they set up a 1-hour photo booth and say, well, while you're having your photos processed, why don't you come in for a quick pray? I think that's pretty much the same model we've been using for public libraries. Why don't you come in and do almost anything else other than use it as a library? If we could move on a slide, please, Andrew. So I think the issues we face whenever we look at kind of campaigning for public libraries, it's not whether the public love them or not. They absolutely do. And actually, you know, our evidence shows that even if people don't use their local library, they love it and they like having it nearby. The problem isn't really that libraries need to adapt or modernize. They have absolutely done so. In fact, I was on the team that did the People's Network terminals in public libraries 22 years ago. And so we've been doing coffee and Wi-Fi for, you know, the thick end of 20 years. And the problem isn't fundamentally whether we're needed. And I think we've learned in the pandemic quite how much we're needed. But I think we do see a set of problems, which is what we're trying to organize ourselves around. So there is an absolute culture. I've been doing lobbying and advocacy and PR for nearly 30 years now. And I've never seen such a short-term political agenda. We refer to it as a whack-a-mole policy agenda, that if Marcus Rashford makes enough of a fuss, then something will be invested in, but that's pretty much the only thing that will gain policy traction. There's a huge amount of horse trading in local government, so libraries are often the casualty of city centre development or, you know, parties wanting to score points. We've got a lost generation of non-users in senior decision-making roles, so people who didn't have to use the library when they were younger, usually because they were wealthy enough to afford books, meaning that those people who are making these critical decisions aren't themselves people who've depended on the library as a lifeline. We've lost local influence through a lack of seniority in library services. As I say, there are no sector standards that I can stand there as the Library Association and say, you should be doing these things. There is an upside to all this as well, by the way, before you think this is all doom and gloom. And there's been a loss of focus and mission creep. Our view is you take a strong library service with a strong educational offer, a strong book stock, strong range of activities, and you can build other activities on top of that. But it has first and foremost to be a strong library service. If we could move on again, please, Andrew. So the three areas, you know, we're not a local organisation, we're a national organisation, but we try and support work locally, and I really welcome your feedback on how well these things join up. But the three priorities are we've got to build national power and visibility. So if I was to say that there was a decision at number 10 under the May government to refuse to release public library data because libraries were, and I quote, politically toxic, then we have a job to do to change the kind of degree of power that we can exert as a national proposition. We've got to do more to strengthen and empower local library leaders, and I'll mention a little bit more about that in a minute. And then from my point of view, we've got to rebuild the foundations. I think our broad analysis of this is it's taken 30 to 40 years of neglect to get us to where we are, and it's going to take the thick end of the next 2 decades to back us out of it. So I'll talk a little bit about what we think we're going to be able to do tactically around that. If we could move on, Andrew, you're doing a fantastic job. Thank you so much for this. So we have a Library Champions program, which is about people with profile and visibility and influence, speaking out on behalf of libraries. I think one of the first lessons I learned when I was working in comms and lobbying is mobilize your endorsers. You know, it isn't necessarily the libraries that are going to be able to make the best case. And I think as friends groups and endorsers, you have a really fundamental role. So Bobby Seagull, we were lucky to get him just as his star was on the ascendant. He's now on his third television series. He's been in the press and media for us on libraries. He's hosted events and briefings in Parliament. He's introduced us to a lot of media personalities, so people we can talk to who will speak out about libraries. And he regularly includes libraries, so he has a regular slot on Radio 4, various other platforms that he uses to include libraries. So we're on the search for the next one. People always suggest authors, but we're quite keen to have media people and business people who can help us raise influence. But so we are looking for champions. If you have any thoughts, that would be great. Andrew, if we could move on, please. So big part of my job is engagement in Parliament. And so we have been building up gradually a network of parliamentarians in the House of Commons and the Lords. We've been working with their teams to provide briefings, support questions in the House, lodge requests for early day motions. I mean, I think you're probably all aware quite how little accountability there is in the House at the moment. And so unfortunately, a lot of those things have been batted aside. But we do have the All-Party Parliamentary Group as an ongoing platform for libraries, knowledge and information, which gives us a vehicle. We meet with them 3 to 4 times a year and hold roundtable sessions about really the future of public libraries, their impact during COVID, and try and share good ideas. So we have around 82 parliamentarians in that network, of which around 2/3 are Lords and peers. If we could move on again, please, Andrew. Thank you. And we do also do social media advocacy. I have to say it's a bit chip paper, some of this stuff. It tends to come and go very quickly and not have a huge amount of impact. So we have seen a great campaign from our colleagues in Scotland, Libraries Are Essential, which sort of broke out of social media and reached the press and the media, and they were able to get high profile media personalities in Scotland to engage with the message, which then meant it was taken up by the First Minister and Deputy First Minister in the Scottish Government. I mean, one of the things I think possibly will come as no surprise is there's a sharp divergence between England and the devolved nations. So Scotland, Wales, Northern Ireland all have policies that are about improving lives, lifting people out of poverty, helping people develop skills, and public libraries are seen as part of those policies. It's very hard to discern a similar policy agenda in Westminster at the moment. If we could move on again, please, Andrew. Lovely, which brings us to Libraries Week. So I think I can't claim credit for the timing, because I think the timing might have been yours, Laura, when this began as a library lobby. And so there was a National Libraries Day that morphed into a library lobby in Parliament. We took on that timing and wanted to expand it to a week, partly because libraries were saying they were finding it hard to participate on a single day. So the public mission of Libraries Week is to celebrate the nation's much loved libraries and increase awareness of what they offer, drive engagement, and encourage repeat use. So we've been running it for 4 years. The highest figure we've had for engagement is around 13 million people. The lowest is around 9 million, which was year before last. We actually had an amazing virtual Libraries Week last year, which was focused on books and reading. But the subtext is to help libraries increase their political power and their visibility, both within central and local government. And so we need policymakers and decision makers really to understand and engage with libraries as a platform for local impact. And so the idea is that this isn't just about doing fun stuff that gains public traction. You're meant to then bring in your local policymakers, local councillors, local elected members, portfolio holders, and show them what you're doing so that there's a reason to engage with the library. If we could move on, please, Andrew. Thank you. So the kind of concept behind this one really came from, I don't know if you remember, there were some riots a few years ago, and the day after the riots, there were photographs in the press of a sea of brooms as people took to the streets to clean up and reclaim the streets. There's a flavour of that here. This is about taking action through your library, and so improving the place where you live, helping people, and there's obviously an element here of coming back from COVID, people reconvening, taking action together. So some of the examples include, local walks, people spending time cleaning up local areas, as I say, kind of reading and book groups, essentially encouraging people to participate in activities that demonstrate the power of the library to support social change and inclusion. So we're encouraging libraries to partner with local people, local community organisations. We're developing messaging and marketing materials around libraries as an essential part of community recovery. There's a very solid political analysis behind this, which is about placemaking and about post-COVID recovery. And there's an element of it which is about recovery in all parts of the UK, including the places that have been left behind or are neglected economically. So providing library staff with toolkits to support local promotion and advocacy. We're going to be doing things like webinars, training, support to help libraries get out and engage policymakers. I would agree with you, it is a real frustration that advocacy, building local influence, is not a skill set for many library authorities, and that's a real problem. So one of the issues we've seen is, back in the day, certainly when I started in libraries, you would have heads of service that were relatively senior within the council and could exert influence and make sure they had their foot in the door. That is less and less the case, and so we have to support them in building that influence. So just to share some visuals, I've been told by my marketing team that I have to say that these haven't been released yet, so I don't think you can screen grab, but even if you could, please don't screenshot these and share them because they're not being launched until next week. But we were very keen to be able to share them with you this evening. So Andrew, if we could move on, please. Thank you. So what we're trying to do with these is showcase some of the energy, some of the enthusiasm, some of the audiences that are using libraries. So one of the most useful political facts I've had in recent years is that the fastest growing audience for public libraries is 15 to 24-year-olds. If we could move on, please, Andrew. I'm very aware of time, so I'm afraid I'm going to speed up a bit. So people that have throughout this pandemic been out supporting their communities, manning phone lines, taking food around, checking in on people, just the huge amount of work that public libraries have done to keep in touch with their users. If we can move on again, please, Andrew. Thank you. So the whole catching up agenda, so you'll know the government has appointed a recovery czar, that we have 7.7 million school children in the UK who've lost a big chunk of their learning, not to mention their childhood. And so situating libraries as a place where your kids can go, engage, learn, recover, rebuild their literacy skills. If we could move on again, please, Andrew. And then local activism, expression and inclusion. We have a generation coming through for whom identity, representation, being seen is really, really important. And we need to make sure that they recognise the library is their place and that it belongs to them, and that they can use it as a platform for organising and expressing and sharing their work and their local activism. So Andrew, if we could move on again, I'm going to really race through the last bits because I'm sort of slightly massively over time, but just to confirm, we have been funded by the Arts Council to commission an independent review of public library funding in the UK. We're bringing together an independent review panel that will look at the structural problem to do with how public libraries are funded today. If we could move on again, please. We've got to empower local leaders, and I've been doing this long enough to know that by the time you're running a public and media campaign against local cuts, something has already gone terribly wrong in the process. And so where we see libraries that are thriving, it's local leadership and influence that's the most decisive factor. So it's the ability of the leader to build trust, be opportunistic, get a foot in the door, get a hearing, make a difference. And so we are going to have to focus on empowering local leaders to have that foot in the door. If we could move on again, please, nearing the end now. So Andrew, if you're happy to sort of fast forward to when suddenly grey blocks appear. So I think it's the next one. There we go. Thank you. So we're rebuilding this thing from the ground up. In our view, these things were neglected and we need to rebuild them. So we need to reconnect with a public service ethos, mission and purpose, which is why we're reconnecting and readopting the UNESCO IFLA definition of a public library. We need better data, and I'm glad that the Department for Culture, Media and Sport and ACE are supporting an open data project to publish data more transparently. We need library standards, and I am over the moon to be supporting the Library Accreditations project to reintroduce public library standards. We need more and better skilled people, and so we are developing a workforce and skills strategy that will include training public library staff, including in skills like advocacy. We need better, stronger, more visible leadership, and so we are now working with Libraries Connected on a leadership program to identify public library leaders of the future and develop them quickly, because we're going to need them quickly. We're leading the independent review into sustainable long-term funding. We need to see investment in ongoing improvement, stock and premises. One of the big issues we've seen is all of the money's challenge funding, it's all project funding. And what we actually need is capital investment in stock, staff and spaces. And so I am beyond delighted that the new Capital Library Improvement Fund was launched today. It's a £5 million fund, but if we can show how we can use it, then we can go for more. Digital transformation, the British Library is about to launch the single digital presence, which I think will be, from what I've seen, a game changer in terms of the online visibility of public libraries. For national advocacy, we're strengthening the all-party parliamentary group. And then from the point of view of effective local and national promotion, Libraries Connected have been commissioned to develop a communications plan for public libraries, and the Arts Council are in the process of commissioning a national media campaign and film to promote public library use for the public. So a lot of the gaps that we've identified, I am really pleased that there are now actual things happening about. All of those are due to deliver in year. So there is, I think, finally a moment where we're kind of getting our act together to mount a coherent campaign in support. So that's all I've got. Thank you so much. I've gone on far too long, for which apologies, but there's a lot to talk about. But I'll hand back, I think, to Andrew and Laura.
Well, thank you very much, Nick. I'm absolutely gasping at all that. I knew that it was quite impressive what is being done by CILIP and Libraries Connected, which, by the way, folks, Libraries Connected used to be called the Society of Chief Librarians, so people knew what the hell it was. But now it's got this new groovy name, nobody knows what it is. But they've always done splendid work, I think. But the real news is that in recent years, they've actually been given some money, which means they've been able to get some professional staff, and they're doing a lot more than they used to do, a lot more than they used to be able to do. So I think CILIP and Libraries Connected, I like to call it Elsie myself, are doing an awful lot of background work, and it adds up to a pretty impressive, though frightening, program of work. There's all sorts of things to talk about here, but I would urge people in the short term, we promised this would be a meeting about publicity as such, and perhaps Libraries Week in particular. So if people have got things to say or questions to ask, could they perhaps initially focus on this business of what's publicity marketing? What does Libraries Week look like? Does it look inspiring? Do we want to get on the bandwagon? Publicity ideas in general. Is there anyone there?
Just before you hand over, Laura, I was going to say Isidore's put his electronic hand up.
So
yes. He gets in first, but if possible, if people could use the electronic yellow hand that you can see in the corner of Isidore's picture, if you go to reactions, there's a raise hand button that should enable it. If you haven't got that, then by all means wave. But I should have said that at the beginning. So I'll shut up now.
Right, the reactions button is the last one on the right at the bottom. So let's hope you've got it. Isidore, would you like to unmute, please?
Hi, so that was really informative. Thank you. It's very good to hear all the things that's sort of going on behind the scenes. So if anyone doesn't know me, my main work is around LGBT people in public libraries through the organization Book 28. So one of my questions was about publicity and joining with other, not just public figures, but public bodies to get them to endorse. So for example, I know that CILIP's done a lot of work with The Big Issue previously and running articles around homelessness and public libraries. But I was wondering if you'd considered partnering with a group like Stonewall and getting them to do a sort of Libraries Week thing, given the benefits to LGBT people that they receive from well-run, supportive public libraries. And my second question was, when we spoke about demographics of public library users and the younger people growing fast, I'm aware that there's also the Taking Part survey suggests that it is BAME people who disproportionately make up, in terms of their representation in the population, then make up regular library users and people who visited library in the past year, but that the library staff go the other way in terms of being disproportionately white. And I was wondering if there's any plan within the publicity and the outreach to sort of get into BAME communities, or is the fact that we're already in there enough, and whether that had been considered or the BAME steering network was involved in that at all.
Brilliant questions both, thank you. So yeah, on the LGBTQ plus side of things, we've been really grateful to a new network that's come together, which is our LGBTQ plus network, who've helped us sort of map out a strategy for representation and engagement. And a big part of that is partnering with organizations and sort of rights groups and activists. So yes to Stonewall. We're also looking to work with making librarians more visible through Pride, and looking at whether you can have a sort of proud librarians sort of sweeping the nation. And there's just, there's such an amazing contribution to the work of libraries from LGBTQ plus librarians that's kind of been invisible and marginalized, and so we're really drawing that out. So for example, the front cover of our magazine this month is all about, it has the trans flag on it, it's all about living a stealth life, being an information professional who's also trans, and just trying to surface some of those stories and provide a platform. So yes, absolutely there. On the diversity of the workforce front, yeah, it's the first priority in our workforce strategy. So we did the data in 2015, and I won't go into it in huge detail now, but yes, we are hideously monocultural. And so we've set a commitment to reflect the communities we serve. So the first thing we did was we've opened up new categories of subsidised CILIP membership for BAME people to become involved in our community. We're also in the process of setting up bursaries to library school and for training for people from BAME backgrounds. And we're now in the process of setting essentially positive action targets for recruitment into the sector. So for example, the leadership program that I mentioned with Libraries Connected, there are positive action targets in there about bringing forward BAME leaders into the sector. So yeah, I think ultimately there are lots of issues. There's gender disparity in the sector. There's a huge gender pay gap, but we've targeted ethnic diversity in the workforce first, because I think it's the most acute issue. And then we have a whole program around diversifying that workforce. If you go to cilip.org.uk/changing lives, we've set out the whole kind of action plan around that. Okay. I don't know if you can hear, it's just absolutely storming here, so hopefully you can still hear what I'm saying.
I did wonder if there was something in the roof, but it's on the roof.
Sorry about that. I think Liz has got a hand up.
Oh, I can't see Liz for some reason.
It's an actual physical hand.
Yeah, I know, but I can't even see the picture. Never mind the hand. She's very odd. Liz, go for it.
I was just wondering, in Libraries Week or on any other occasion, how does CILIP advocate or promote public libraries when it can't or won't come out publicly against proposals such as those in Essex from Essex County Council?
Thank you, Liz. Yeah, so we've got a sort of 4-step policy or protocol for intervention, basically. And the first step is when something like Essex happens, we'll go and engage with the people involved, so the head of service and with the council. So I've sat down with both to find out what's going on, because as you know, the headlines are often problematic, or they sort of present proposals as done deals or whatever. Then we will seek to make a kind of behind the scenes representation, which is what we've done with Essex County Council about our concerns around their proposals and the Equalities Act. So we did quite a lot of work, in fact, about the fact that we think their plans miss growing communities and new development across Essex. If we don't get satisfaction there, and if you know, the staff and our members feel that it's constructive, we'll mount a public challenge, which will can involve local media, local politicians, and then, which is a point we've only really reached a couple of times, we'll put forward a formal complaint under the superintendent's principles through DCMS. So with Essex, we only got as far as making internal representation to the council, and then the library service suggested that it was more constructive to find a way forward. So it's not that we can't make public announcements, but we try and take a sort of more nuanced view on when it's helpful to and when it's appropriate to, because we have found a couple of times in the past that we went straight to public proclamation, and one, we got our facts wrong, and two, it actually did more harm than good. So we try and pick our way through that quite carefully. Very very happy if, you know, if people feel we've got the balance wrong, very happy to kind of hear that and engage with it. But that's how we do it at the moment.
Thank you.
Keith's got his hand up.
Keith. I think you're on mute, Keith.
Yeah, I think he's looking for the mute button, I suspect. There we go.
Okay, right, thank you very much. Well, first of all, I'm very encouraged, I think we all are, to hear Nick's analysis of the situation and his proposals for it. I certainly learned a lot in doing so. So that's cut out a few of the questions I was going to waste your time with. So on the publicity side, I know we've done it before, that we've harnessed the skills and inspiration of people like Lord Bird, Lord Bragg, Michael Rosen. We've just got to do it again in Libraries Week and at every media opportunity we can do. So I'm just really adding to what Nick's saying about the importance of using the media and personalities. I would just add one other thing. Certainly my own brick wall has been, well, both a local council, in my case Barnet in London, and the other brick wall, of course, has been the Culture Minister and the DCMS, who are totally doing the opposite from what CILIP is doing. They have no political will to support libraries, which is what the 1964 Act, as we know, instructs them to do. And I'm a bit disappointed on the legal opinion about the 1964 Act, because it was quite clearly created to support libraries and prevent their closure, prevent their castration. But there we go. That's what our legal opinion is for. So if it's got to be the Equalities Act, then we've got to go through them. What do we do now? Time is desperately short, because not only the education of our children and grandchildren for the future generations, but also the training of professional librarians is at risk. So we cannot afford to hang about, and I would have thought that we must add to the priorities the working with, I'm great one for dialogue, this evening's a part of it, working with the Culture Minister, Oliver Dowden, working with the DCMS to ensure that their aims are those of CILIP. We've got to work together, just like working with local councils. We've got to work with Parliament and those who are in Parliament. So we mustn't lose sight of that to succeed, they've got to be persuaded of the necessity for following CILIP's aims. Thank you.
Thank you, Keith. No, I completely agree. I really do. And, you know, I mean, I've always said I'll work with anyone who's willing to support libraries. I'll go anywhere and have any conversation. A colleague said to me the other day, these are not good days for Enlightenment values, and they're not wrong. You know, this isn't a good age for England in terms of empowerment through knowledge and universal access to information and franchisement through education. And so unfortunately, this is not fertile ground for advocating for libraries. If it doesn't have a monetary value, or if it isn't a utilitarian contribution to our industrial economy, then they don't like it. And so we are, I'm afraid, going to have to hold our noses a bit and present a utilitarian argument for public libraries and say that if you really want a high skills economy, then every child needs access to a quality local library. You know, if you really want an innovative high tech economy, then you need a place of connection on every high street and village. You know, if you really want creative ideas that are the envy of the world, then children need to learn in a library and a school library. And so we have to adjust the message to the recipient a little bit, and it does mean holding our nose a bit. But you know, I think longer term, we're all hoping for a return to some of those Enlightenment values that believe fundamentally in learning and empowerment. But we're just, honestly, we're not in that place right now.
Isidore has his hand up again and nobody else does, so he can have a second bite at the cherry.
Just to say thank you, really.
I appreciate everything you do. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. I was also just saying I have to leave in a moment. My question was quite a practical one, which is in some of that base kind of information and toolkit that we there for people in promoting and lobbying libraries. Will there be translations on the public facing side? And if so, how many languages will be provided? Obviously, it'll be impossible to translate everyone's campaign materials. But for some of that core publicity, will CILIP be providing translations?
No, and we probably should do. To be honest, that's the first time I've been asked that. So the only translations we've got planned are Welsh. But that's really helpful feedback, and I apologise that we haven't thought of it, but I'll take it back to our team and look at what we can do. I mean, obviously, you know, within budget and constraints, but yeah.
Even if there was just like one overview fact sheet and just that of, you know, the benefit of joining the library and how to support it, and that fact sheet was translated, that I think would be massively helpful.
No, it's a brilliant idea. We're running a program called Working Internationally at the moment, and a big part of that has been about newly arrived communities, so migrants and refugees, who often head to the library first because it's safe and they trust it and they know what it is. And linguality has proven to be totally essential to that. So no, we should have thought of it, but thank you. I'll factor it.
Yeah, I think there's some languages as well, like Bulgarian, that have actually crept up very quickly, and how high they rank in terms of the most spoken languages in areas like London that are often left off those lists. Definitely in the communities I belong to. So I'd be really interested to hear about that. Thank you for your insights, and everyone else enjoy the rest of the meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you, Isidore. Now, I'm just wondering about the Libraries Week material. Is anybody looking? They're very handsome posters. I think normally it's pretty obvious, like digital is a good thing, digital happens in libraries, we all know that. I think they might need a bit more kind of research this time, in that we will have to know who our library champion staff were. I mean, I'm sure most of us do, but it's going to take a bit more preparation this time, I think, to keep to the themes that the posters outline. I'm just wondering what other people around here think about that. Are you saying to yourselves, wow, that looks terrific, we must find out more and get on board with this? Or are you thinking, gosh, that's a bit of a challenge, have we really got the time to take this on as well as all the other things we do? Is anybody out there got any views on the actual Libraries Week material, or underlying themes indeed?
Well, if nobody else is going to chip in, and knowing that there are a couple, at least 3 other or 4 other SOL people on the call. I mean, SOL, which is Save Our Libraries Essex, which is the group that's been campaigning in Essex, is now preparing for the new regime, because we have a new leader and a new cabinet member responsible for libraries. And we'll be meeting in a couple of weeks' time to talk about where we go from here. But it seems to me that one of the things that we've been talking about during, for the last year, is how do we get people back into libraries? Because that's, I'm sure that's been what people have been talking about all over the country. But from our point of view, we need to encourage that. And arguably, we may need to be working with the county council. Even if we don't, it seems to me that using anything that CILIP puts out and maybe adapting it or bouncing off it to produce our own material may be something that we will do. And I'm not committing SOL to do anything, but it's just something that I've been thinking about.
I think
Liz has got a hand up, so she may want to contradict me. You're on mute, Liz.
To jump in if Nick was going to reply, but I was just wanted to talk about how I think there's a lot more work that can be done to draw schools into using libraries, but not just schools using public libraries, but libraries being a bridge from schools to adulthood. And I think Libraries Week would be a great week to make sure that every single child has a membership ticket, because that is like lifeblood, and it also brings the family in. And then if the family and the children go, then you've got a lifelong thing going on, and you've got a bridge between the child and the family.
It's absolutely brilliant. So we are currently working with Libraries Connected and the National Literacy Trust on a very rapid piece of work that's come out of the literacy recovery. So, Boris Johnson announced that he's very concerned about school children that need to catch up. And there is money that's flowing in behind that. And so what we're in the process of doing is creating an army of literacy recovery leads in public libraries who can forge a relationship with their local school library. And we've got to have it done more or less by the end of July. And the idea is then that they will bring school-aged children into the public library and show them what the services are that they can get. So I absolutely agree. I mean, I think in many ways life begins with a library card long before you get your national insurance number, and it is a passport to so many other things. So yes, we are working on it with National Literacy Trust, and I completely agree. If that were an ambition to get every child registered, that would be fantastic. There was a campaign, wasn't there? Every child a library card, around about 7 or 8 years ago. But yeah. I agree, to be honest, with what Keith says as well. There are countless campaigns, and that doesn't mean we can stop. The current situation shows every sign of persisting, certainly till 2024 and possibly 2029. So we're going to have to keep at this for the foreseeable.
Okay, thank you very much, Nick. There is a lot going on. And for what it's worth, yes, it is my view that there have been really so many campaigns that came and went, and so many celebrities came and said their thing and went. And so many organizations doing so many things. I really think we need to work on everybody working together in a coherent way. And we're just at the beginning of that. But that's more than the allotted time, I think, that we have for your slot, Nick. And it has been immensely useful. I think we need to digest what you said a lot more carefully, because there is just so much going on, and thank you for that. So we'd be delighted if you'd stick around, because we have something else coming up now, which I hope Helen is out there. If I can explain, this is a more limited, if you like, coherent, if you like, project. Helen Anderson is a PhD graphic designer. Her project at Newcastle University, her chosen project is how can graphic design help libraries' publicity, basically. She came to us a couple of months ago because we just published something saying that library publicity was a disaster. We had a bit of a chat. We gave her a little bit of info and encouragement indeed, and said, look, if you come up with anything, we'd be very interested to see what you come up with, and if we think it's any good, we'd be very happy to support it. And well, she has really. She's got a very good idea, we think. So we thought we would present it to our members and see what they think. So are you there, Helen? You were?
I am, yes. Hello.
Okay, well, please go ahead.
I have one slight correction to Laura's lovely introduction. PhD is a little far reaching at the minute. I'm just an MA student. PhD is a long way up. I also work as a library assistant at Newcastle University Library, so I'm kind of aware of some of the issues with publicity, because there's like from my conversation with Laura, there's a lot of overlap between what the difficulties public libraries face and the difficulties and perhaps mentality of publicity in academic libraries. So it's a topic that's been interested for a while. So yes, so this meeting's come at a really opportune time for me, because I'm halfway through the project, and as Laura said, the question that I'm looking at is how graphic design can be used to advocate for public libraries. Unfortunately, I don't have a finished final product quite yet, but I mean, I can post links into the chat if that's any good, just to give people an idea. Is that probably the best way of doing it? Great, I'll do that now. Well, so just to give you a bit of background, the aim that I started out with and the focus of my research has been about kind of updating the perceptions of public libraries, because there was a report called Making a Difference by, is it Jennifer Peachy? But that was quite interesting, this advocacy report, and it's sort of saying how there's a lot of misconceptions about, you know, public libraries are only for this part of the public, and when in truth they're there for everyone. So that was quite interesting. And I was very interested about their role as a piece of social infrastructure. So kind of focusing on the importance of the physical space as well as the digital provision. I should say as well that I'm under no illusion that graphic design will fix public libraries. However, it is a useful tool for advocacy, because obviously it's a visual format, so you can convey messages which are often quite complex, like such as what public libraries do, in a easier, you know, visual form, basically. So several points stuck out from my research. One is that there is simply not one single way of advocating. There's lots of different ways of advocacy. You can use new technology such as social media and the internet. You can use, you know, your traditional kind of protest posters. There's just not one single way of doing it. So often it's good to have like a mixed approach. Also, the fact that public libraries have a multitude of roles in people's lives, you know, they mean different things to different people. It's incredibly hard to market, but such an incredibly good point. So I was kind of interested in kind of going down that route a bit more. Also, from my research, you know, many of the problems that libraries face about like justifying their worth and that, these are not new problems. When they were formed in the 19th century, people were questioning why, you know, they should be formed for people to use and that. So, I mean, I guess this is because, I mean, you'll probably have your own views on this, but public libraries, they change with society and culture and technology. So scary as it sounds, they may have to continue proving their worth as, you know, new things come along and threaten what they offer. So yes, those are the 3 points that stuck out with me, and have kind of guided where the project has gone, which I will get to in a second, I promise. So as a way of kind of figuring out a solution, I've started producing some like protest posters and sharing them online. I'll just put links to some in the chat here, just so you can get an idea of what I've been doing. Okay, so they're in the chat. So just as I say, it's just to get an idea of like what I could be doing, but the key to any effective advocacy is having some substance behind any kind of style. There needs to be context. A post is nothing if there's nothing backing it up. Like, you might think, oh great, a public library, but then what? So there needs to be context, a call to action, just to kind of encourage behaviors to change, or maybe to get someone to ask, you know, their local council, well, why have you cut funding to the library? So context is very important. So between now and my deadline in August, what I'm hoping to do is create a platform which will house a bank of images that people can share, they can download, and more importantly, contribute to, creating an open source collection of visuals advocating for public libraries. As I say, I don't have a solution just now, but I can put some examples in the chat of alternative ones. So it's been used for lots of different causes, from like environmental causes to a very good one in America about the Mueller report, breaking down government documents to try and get people interested and, you know, involved in their politics. And there's just another one I wanted to share.
Helen, just before you
Yeah.
share anything, can everybody else see the chat? I didn't intend that it should not be visible, but apparently it is not visible to anybody except me. So what I am going to do, because I don't think I can, you should be able to, is when we finish, thank you, Jane, I will when we have finished, we will find some way of ensuring that it's on the recording, so that and anybody who wants it can email the library campaign, email above my head, and we'll get it to you one way or t'other. But for some reason, it's not allowing me to. Oh, there we go. Right, now everybody should be able to see it. So when Helen's finished, you can re-enter them, and hopefully everybody will see them.
I can see the chat, but I can't see anything in it from Helen.
No, you can't, but you should be able to, if she re-enters them, send to everyone after
I'll just try.
So sorry, Helen.
No, you're absolutely fine. I'll just try another one, see if people can. So these, I'm just re-entering these ones. These are the posters that I've been kind of experimenting and kicking around ideas with.
Oh, here they come. Thank you. Yes.
Sorry about that, folks.
So yeah, absolutely fine. So yeah, so an online bank of resources that could be shared and people can contribute to, you can download. There would obviously need to be some kind of context, which I'm struggling with at the minute. I mean, there's some sites that have direct links to like local MPs and that, to kind of say, well, look, you've come looked at these messages, now why don't you act and you know, ask what's going on. And I think, I mean, from my perspective, it seems like a good idea from what I've read, because it would be an open-ended solution, because a lot of, as already been mentioned, there's a lot of fixed campaigns. It's like here and making a big fuss and then nothing. So it would be kind of like a sustained campaign, just running along as people, you know, want to share their work. There's some great images being used at library protests and at a local level, and stuff like that could be uploaded and shared. So like if one area has not many resources to hand, they could go on, they could share and download. That sense kind of even things out. It's questionable whether it could be coherent, because being crowdsourced, obviously, it could result in lots of diverse images going up there. But that in itself is a good thing, because, as I say, libraries can mean anything to everyone. So it would be a nice reflection of how wide the appeal is. And yeah, it would just serve as an ongoing record of why, libraries matter, what could be lost if they're gone, and it could be a useful tool for the future, basically. So that's where I'm at currently.
Okay, thank you very much, Helen. I have to say this idea does appeal to me, because I've been involved and seen the work of so many friends groups, and I've so often been impressed by some of the things they produce. Not just protest posters, but also ordinary stuff for children to colour in, and stuff about I love my library because, and just ordinary nice posters saying libraries do this and libraries do that. So there's a lot of stuff out there which I have long wanted to harness, and we'd be very happy indeed to host, if you wanted it, a central resource like that people could put into and take out of. What do other people think of this idea? Would it be useful to have some ready-made posters and bright ideas to take advantage of, should you need them for any purpose at all?
Barbara looks as though she's trying to say something, but she's on mute. If you are trying to say something, Barbara, just take yourself off mute. That's it.
Okay, no, I wasn't actually going to say anything, but I feel as though I've been pushed into it now, so I will say something. No, I think it would be a good idea to have posters that we could actually get and use, but also use them in a way for local information as well. So we could adapt them for local information, if you know what I mean. Like if it's something like, say if it's something like a picture of a book and it says something's happening, we can actually fill our details in on the pages of the book or something like that. If you know that, yeah.
That, I think, is a very good idea. So there are things that people could customize, put in the name of their own particular library at the bottom or wherever there's a space for it. Yeah, nice one. Thank you. I'm glad we forced you to say it.
Liz.
I think it's a really great idea, Helen, and I was wondering actually whether there could be one kind of like major poster that's used at Libraries Week, where every single campaign that's active at the moment gets their name on it, almost like an open letter that can be shared across the entire media and just gets punched out day after day after day. Because I think the local campaigns are the things that really reach people's sight, because they're the people that use libraries. So one of these posters, whatever you think would work best, if every single campaign that's active across the whole country could have their name on it as shouting out for libraries and protecting them, I think that would be really cool.
Excuse my ignorance, is there anywhere where you could get like a list of all the campaigns, or is that? I think like Soul or other people could probably find a list quite easily and get their permission to be part of it. It would be a bit like an open letter, I guess, but it would be a poster. So, yeah.
But if you go to the Library Campaign website, we have in fact put on there every friends group we've been able to trace, whether or not they want it, if you like, the ones that are publicly known. We'd have to get everyone's permission. And actually, Liz, I'm not too sure how you could get, I mean, there's hundreds of them. I'm not sure how you could get them all onto one poster. It'd be better to get your own local one onto whatever poster was being used, no?
I was thinking like a word cloud.
I
will post this link in. It's a link to a design article, just because what you've said, Liz, just reminds me of it. And it was a poster that was produced last year by a designer called Craig Oldham. And when, I'm not too sure who it was in the government, but where they were talking about low-skilled workers who turned out to be the key workers of the pandemic. And well, I'll put it in so you can have a look. But this guy, Craig Goldman, was trying to include all of the people who came under that pay bracket, of which libraries are on one of the posters. And it was just a way of trying to condense such a vast array of jobs in one place. But in the end, he's actually had to produce like a series of them just to include everyone who's been dismissed as low skilled in that. But I put the link in there just, you know, so there, again, this is where graphic design kind of comes into its own for advocacy, because although there's a lot of complex information on there, if you took the time to pause and look, you would actually get stuff out. So, I mean, what you're saying could actually be done, yeah.
I think that would be so powerful.
Right, well, that's an idea to work on then. Has anybody else got a bright idea for their ideal poster that they wish somebody would produce?
Well, while people are thinking, Chloe had her hand up a moment ago, but it disappeared. I'm not sure if she thought better of it.
Hi. I was thinking if we're thinking about getting people involved rather than seeking out people, we could also offer people to participate on a volunteer basis via social media. If there were an image that they could download, personalize, add their name or their organization, and then add to Twitter with a unique hashtag. Then when we use that hashtag, we can see everyone who's ever posted in that name with that image. And it would be another way to have a collage that you could maybe also use yourself, Helen, afterwards. And we would hopefully invite people to use it with the idea that they know they're contributing to your larger work as well. So it'd be a call to action for the community to come together.
Great.
Sorry, Laura, similar to that, I mean, there's the idea of Facebook cover pictures where I've been vaccinated twice or whatever it is, and we might be able to come up with something like that. I support my local library. I suspect that's been done before, but no harm doing it again.
No harm doing it again, or doing it properly and keeping on doing it, which is what goes wrong with so many campaigns. They happen and then they fade away. How many people here actually use social media a lot?
It's probably
raised hands, but
yeah. Of the hands that have been raised, Peter's got his hand up, I think, to speak rather than acknowledge the question. You're on mute, Peter. Still on mute.
No, I should be okay.
That's it.
I was just saying that I agree that we do use social media, and it's quite effective actually.
Yeah. Where are you from, Peter?
Northamptonshire, Stratford.
Oh, the Northamptonshire Mafia is here in force today.
We are. we need to be, I suppose, in one sense, but we've had a big fight.
Indeed. What do you actually use, Peter? Like, Twitter or Instagram or what?
Use Facebook, Facebook Messenger, and that gives us chance for people to ask us questions. And like I had several people asking about when are the toddler and baby groups starting again.
Oh, really? That's I didn't know that power existed. That would be hugely useful, wouldn't it?
Yes, obviously we can't yet, but that's questions that are now being asked by various people.
Oh, brilliant. Thank you.
Okay.
Oh, Phil has his hand up.
Yes, like Peter, we use Facebook a little, and we have developed a little bit of a conversation, strangely, on mother and toddler groups at the moment. But questions on opening hours and during lockdown, what services were available and what were not, and so on. We don't use Instagram or Twitter.
It's true to say that Seoul has been using Facebook to almost the exclusion of everything else except Twitter.
Yeah, Twitter certainly got Michael Rosen heavily involved, as well as Jacqueline Wilson, as well as various other big name celebrities that saved over a third of our libraries.
James has a hand up.
Oh yes, hello. Sorry, my video isn't working properly, so I'm afraid you'll you can hear me without saying. I was just going to say, I work with Bristol Libraries. I'm just attending kind of as an observer today, and we use social media a lot as well. Certainly our Facebook page is very popular and well used, and we've had a lot of questions about things like, we call it baby bounce and rhyme, but toddler groups and things like that, and it always gets a good response, you know, when we answer questions and publicise our online events. And I think that could be something we could use with the help of friends groups, etc., to promote Libraries Week, because we haven't done a great deal for it in the couple of years that I've been working there. So it'd be good to kind of improve our response to it.
So sorry, go on, Andrew.
I was just going to say there was supposed to be somebody from one of the Bristol Friends groups, but I can't see her on the call. Anyway, Laura.
Oh, I was just going to say, so you as a library member of staff can see it could work very well if you could work in tandem with local friends groups. I don't know how thoroughly Bristol is covered by friends groups for every library, but you could see a partnership model there, can you?
Yes, so I work in the Central Library, and I think we do have a friends group, but I don't know if they're hugely active at the moment. I know one of our branch libraries definitely does have quite a strong friends group, that's Redland. But no, to be honest, I'm not too sure about the others.
Well, our website lists about a dozen or more.
Okay, that could be useful.
You go to our website, you'll find them.
Okay, thanks for that.
We can probably make quite a few connections, but the initial connection we often need to make is for people to know that we're there in the first place, and that we've got, for instance, a list of friends groups, or the ability perhaps to put A in touch with B, because we've been in contact with both. We have a Phil. It seems to be
yes.
Hand back.
Just a couple of comments before my battery dies. On the subject of posters, I doubt many of us are graphic designers, and the availability of some professionally or posters produced by someone with a lot more expertise than myself would be much appreciated. And I think also the ability to customize them in some way. The other thing is, I'm sure there are plans afoot. This is a question really for Nick. Part of me thinks that there might be some benefits from a national sort of trickle-down campaign to attract publicity during Libraries Week. Now, I can approach my local papers, but I think it might have more impact if I was able to say, this is part of a national campaign, to give a link to a national campaign, to use a national press release and so on, so that what I'm doing can be seen as part of a countrywide initiative. Now, that may be on the cards, I don't know, but that to me would give more weight to what I could do locally.
If I may respond, I mean, yeah, I've been sitting here really thinking over that one. I mean, I think Helen's absolutely right. I think the visuals, anything that can be kind of crowdsourced to send a single clear message over and over again. I think part of the problem is we've got a million different approaches in 150 different library authorities. But I really hadn't thought, and I should have done because Andrew and Laura have been telling me to think about it properly, but we're all in the same business here, and you have reach and visibility that we don't. We can't get messages out to everyone everywhere, whereas you can. And so it feels to me like we ought to build into Libraries Week something that is explicitly a big national message. There's a thing on social media they call a thunderclap, where a load of people sign up to send the same message at the same time on the same day, so that it has a chance of breaking through. I wonder if we need a library equivalent of a thunderclap, so that we're all sending the same graphic and the same message and the same call to action on the same day. I'd love to join up to make that happen, because I think it could really cut through in a way that we can't. And we can't get messaging into the local press just because we don't have the reach to do it. So if that were an outcome from today, I think that would be really exciting to try and do something like that and see how it works.
You're on for that, I think. It's there's not an awful lot of time, but I do think that is the essence of what Libraries Week could be, if we can get moving on that. I see kind of Chloe put her hand up and then retreated again. I don't know whether you wanted to come back, Chloe, or have we?
Sure. Yeah, I just put it down in the, so not to be distracting while someone else is speaking. Just to comment on everyone using social media in different libraries, using different amounts. I think it would be great if the library campaign could be a voice for those who don't have time to make something, a nice soundbite or visual for social media. So if friends groups want to send things to the library campaign, and then in whatever media that they feel comfortable with, and then it can be repackaged, and then we can shout about it and say, look what these friends groups are doing. They're doing something great. In their words, it's X. Just to be a vehicle for other people to have their voices spread a little bit farther.
Terrific. Yeah, that's a perfect slogan for us, the library campaign, for people who don't have time. But really, that is something that if you get into full campaigning mode, it is more than a full-time job. It's absolutely exhausting. We're hoping to move more into the territory of before it gets that bad, as Nick said, more pleasurable activities which gets the library's message out before it becomes a matter of life and death. So this is territory we need to explore with Nick and people who know what this is all about, like you. Yeah.
I think Liz wanted to say something a moment ago, but she may have retreated as well.
I was just going to say, having a poster or a visual, or being part of a big like the thunderclap idea is great, because you'll get into all your local papers with that as well, because local papers absolutely love a visual. So whether it's a poster including everything that's going on, or even a screen grab from a Twitter thing showing lots of followers or lots of responses, I think that's a really cool idea.
Okay, well, the onus is really on us and on CILIP, and of course CILIP, the Libraries Week campaign has a lot of sponsors beneath CILIP, as it were. It looks like there's a task ahead to think more deeply about how the local and the national and the professional and the users can work together around this theme in October. So that's a definite thing that we are going to work on, I promise you. What do other people think of that sort of model? So that local campaigners have all the advantages of a national campaign with perhaps a few celebrity figures behind it and some professional looking stuff should they wish to use it. Though of course a homemade poster by a child is just as effective, but I think a range of visuals would be a very useful thing to offer, and the chance to act together on the same day or with a thunderclap even at the same time would have more value locally and have a chance of getting through nationally. So I think there's a lot of hopeful ideas there for us to work on. What does anybody else think of that? Did it even make sense, what I've just said?
You're getting thumbs up.
Oh, good, okay.
Well, at least 2 people or 3 people think.
I thought perhaps people just didn't have the heart to respond because they didn't know where to start with all that. Okay, well, look, we have mapped out some. Oh, here's somebody. Liz is back again.
I think she's just agreeing.
Oh, fine. Sorry. Yeah. Well, I think we've mapped out some territory. I think we've given each other a bit of hope, sense of concrete things to get our teeth into. Sounds a bit painful, actually, like that. I think we're getting close-ish to 9 o'clock. Does anybody else want to say anything on themes we've been just talking about, or does anybody want to say something completely wild that we haven't covered at all up till now?
Neither of the above, but I will say something. I mean, I think.
Barbara, go wild, please.
Right. I just want to say that one of the big statements that's been going out during COVID is the Build Back Better campaign. And I think it's something that the libraries can actually get on the back of, because building back is one thing and building back better is going to be a huge thing, I think. And that's for many, many issues. Now, if you can look at the back of my thing there, I mean, as you can see, I'm a member of CND. And one of the big campaigns we've got now is nurses, not nukes. We've also got books, not bombs. So I think we've got a lot of things that we can actually join together and actually push forward on lots of these issues. Thank you. You said something off the wall, so I said something off the wall.
Literally, in your case.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I had noticed the poster, and that's terrific. Yeah, that's the germ of a whole other idea that I haven't quite clarified in my teeming brain yet. But if the libraries were the theme for a whole series of posters that said things like, well, I can't think, books, not bombs, PCs, not, I don't know, but there's something in there which looks really good. So thank you for that.
I was just going to say, which is, as I say, not really in answer to either of the things you threw out there, which I think from the library campaign, we will probably want to have another meeting, another session like this before the summer well, before we really get into summer, but possibly before we're all allowed out on the streets, assuming that happens, in the old-fashioned way, that is. This may not be the end of it, and I know there are at least two or three people on this call who we have been or may well be working with to do some of the stuff that we've been talking about, in terms of people with particular skills in graphic design or social media and all that kind of stuff. But if other people are up for that, then by all means get in touch with us. In fact, not by all means, please. And I deliberately had a different thing behind my head today, because the last time I had the library campaign logo, which people said it made me look as if I had horns coming out of the top of my head.
Well, you know, a new look, refresh the image and all that. It got you noticed anyway. Yeah. Well, I don't know. I could ramble on for a few more minutes, but we seem to have come to a not implausible conclusion that there is something to be gained from Libraries Week indeed, but we need to work harder and soon on exactly how we marry the local and the national. And I think that is a very promising way of looking at things, and a way we really ought to look at things all the time. So yes, I don't really want to sit around making small talk for another 5 minutes. So unless anybody else has been having a quiet gin while this has been going on and suddenly feels empowered to speak to the nation, I think we might start leaving.
Okay, I'm going to stop recording